All right, welcome on back to another edition of the Baltimore Beatdown podcast. It is Sunday night, January 2nd, 2022. As we get going here, you might be listening on Monday morning to the podcast as we release it to the feeds. But no matter, the Ravens have fallen to the Los Angeles Rams in Baltimore 20-19 in yet another soul-crushing 1-point defeat this time. Not just one score, 1 point. They had to find a new way to top their previous lows, or maybe outdo their previous lows might be a better way of putting it. But they lose to the Rams. They drop to 8-8, which usually means 500, but they got another game to go. Regardless, probably pretty much out of playoff contention at this point. There are some weird things that can happen next week that can get them in, but it's going to be a tough road. My name is Jake Luke. I'm joined by Spencer Nathaniel Schultz. How we feeling today, bud?
Doing poorly, feeling like a gutter rat after a tiring week of New Year's and Christmas and going to this game today. But first and foremost, I would like to say that this game does not count. Takebacks, I call takebacks. This game does not count. This is the 17th game, the add-on NFC same division place finisher extra game was this game. So technically does not count. Nothing that happened today actually counted. The Ravens did not piss down their leg starting at the end of the first half with some weird sequences and then have another dystopian slew of strange sequenced events leading to them ultimately losing by 1 point. That did not happen. None of that happened. This was not real. So it is good to realize that the Ravens are still alive in the playoffs and everything's good. They're very healthy. And what you saw today was a mirage.
It does feel like we're in a simulation a little bit, doesn't it? This season, when we look back on it, it's going to be a simulation, and I'm not going to count it. Actually, maybe that's not true, because a lot of these wins mean a lot to me and are going to mean a lot to me for a long time. Well, a couple of these wins that took place in the first half of the year. But since the second half of the year started, it has been the exact inverse of what the joy we got to experience in the first half of the year. It feels like the going back against the Ravens, and it does feel like a simulation, but it is not. They are very much 8-8 in this hideous 17-game schedule. They do have the one more game to play here. They have a chance to go out and get a winning record, which I think means something. I hope they're able to do it. But yeah, it came to an end today, and I think ultimately the main storyline that I look at is the horrendous management of that goal to go situation with just under 6 minutes to go, or just over 6 minutes to go, excuse me, where they go out there with a 2-point lead. You score a touchdown, you basically put the game away. And to your point, I think this is something that we've both been kind of harping on, is that they piss down their leg. The players piss down their leg. The coaches piss down their leg. Shout out to that guy who does the TikToks. Kind of feels like that's going to be the word around the coaches' film room tomorrow. And they all deserve blame, and it's unfortunate. And to me, what's unfortunate about it, and I wrote about this, I kind of put my thoughts together in a little bit of a longer piece for BaltimoreBeatdown.com. This one feels a little bit different. This one feels like they should have had it. This doesn't feel like the Green Bay game or the Cleveland game where they're chasing for 3 or 4 quarters and they almost pull off the miraculous comeback. It's, a valiant effort, that kind of thing. This one feels like a wasted defensive effort, and it comes down to, and it's always tough and not always the right thing to do to point out 1, 2, 3 plays, but it feels like to me a wasted defensive effort that comes down to that sequence on the goal line that they utterly, completely fucked up and probably are missing out on the playoffs because of it. And that's unfortunate. And, listen, this team is not a Super Bowl group by any stretch of the imagination, but I wanted them and for all the shit they've gone through this year to make the playoffs, and to see it kind of slip through their fingers like sands in the hourglass of time was tough. It's tough.
It certainly is. And it would be a nice little it would be a nice little medal, a little badge of honor of, we're the team that was injured, but we still made the playoffs. But at the same time, I think that expecting magic or praying for magic and then kind of getting angry at the failure to do so is something that has created kind of a toxic narrative in some ways. And I mean, right now, the best way to describe the Ravens is they're an 8-8 football team. They lost a ton of guys throughout the season, including their quarterback. Everybody. The coaches had them play very competitively against some talented teams, against some skilled and balanced teams, and were able to hang in there tough most of the time, but they just couldn't overcome the moments of 2-point conversions, fourth downs, stops, all of these different things. And it's like the coaches did a great job preparing this ragtag group of bandits during the week. They got everybody that they had, whoever it was that they had, on the same page, and were able to do some things at different points or at different games. In this one, they're able to do some nice things in the first half, quarterback power or quarterback counter or whatever it was. I haven't gotten to watch all the way again, but on fourth down, Tyler Huntley gets them down there. Then they kind of miss, and they can't connect with Devin Duvernay in the back of the end zone, and they sustained some nice drives, and they moved the ball, and they converted first downs, and they made stops, and all of these things. But at the crux, at the penultimate moment, they're incapable of getting it done. You've got Tony Jefferson out there trying to make plays in the year 2022 for the Ravens, and they just simply, couldn't get it done. And it just really felt like things were going to start to go down the tubes as soon as they threw that interception that got returned all the way back to, I think, the Ravens 26, 27-yard line on a miscommunication between Huntley and Hollywood Brown. They haven't really been able to hit any deep shots. They haven't been able to score any long touchdowns. They have to grind their teeth and gnaw and mash these long drives every single time to go get them. And at the end of the day, their undrafted backup quarterback wasn't able to win. He was able to beat the Chicago Bears at the end of a game, 16-13 or whatever it was, and then, can't get it done against some more talented teams. They couldn't get this ragtag group of bandits to finish games. I think that there's a lot of silver linings from things that have happened, in the sense that they have a lot of these depth players and these younger players and these role players who now have been in these big moments of these game-defining moments. Then they're going to gain back some confidence. They're going to be able to go out and get a couple more veterans, add some talent in the draft, do some other things. So there are no moral victories, as Mark Andrews said after the game. And I certainly hate the fact that him having a historic season for this franchise and one of the greatest seasons that any tight end has ever put together has all kind of been in vain. He has been truly Super Saiyan, especially the last month, but really this entire year, going all the way back to that Colts game against a good Colts team that had a tough defense. They had some guys out for that one, but he kind of was able to take over, and they just weren't able to convert these into wins. You don't have your quarterback down the stretch. Even Tyler Huntley, who has played, admirably as a backup considering the circumstances, has had COVID and sickness and missed practice. So being able to string together these long 4-quarter kind of brawls with these good qualified teams has just not been in the cards. They haven't been able to get it done. And, like I said, it would have been a really nice badge of honor to make the playoffs and see if you can go play some gritty game against the fucking Titans or someone. But at the end of the day, this season was kind of a wash. There were some memories. There were some cool moments beating the Chiefs, the comebacks, the Vikings, the Colts, the end of game excitement, the living, the dying, the breathing, the fire. It has been a lot of fun. It has certainly been nothing short of entertaining. And, there's going to be sweeping discourse on who's to blame for what. The Titans were also a very injured team and were able to win their division in a shitty division. And, the Ravens weren't able to get it done, weren't able to make the dance. It was disappointing considering what this season felt like maybe 5 days before they kicked off against the Raiders, somewhere around there. And then since then, it's just kind of been adversity, good, highs, lows, everything in between, even starting with that first game. So many moments throughout this season, so many game-defining plays and late fourth quarter drives and stops and touchdowns allowed and all of those things. So It definitely has been a roller coaster. It has been a whirlwind. It would have been nice to see the Ravens able to punch their ticket and get in there and be a successful franchise and team, but it wasn't in the cards. They didn't have any magic with their backup quarterback down the stretch, fighting against other playoff teams and teams that are fighting for playoff spots. And I mean, Steelers game a couple weeks ago, couldn't get it done. Dolphins game on Thursday night, that complete, shit show of a game. All of these things cumulatively have just been a very long, winding, tedious, exciting, disappointing, happy, sad, mixed bag of emotions. So overall, the Ravens are an 8-8 team that couldn't, overcome their tragic flaws this season, I guess to say. So today was a summation of that and all the different moments. Brandon Stevens gets a huge stop. Tony Jefferson stops on the 2-point conversion, and they get the Rams to 4th down, and all of these things, all of these highs, all of these lows. It's just they've had to keep continuously, beating their head into a brick wall for like 2 straight months, trying to get one of these games, and just really struggling to be able to close out at the end. And it's unfortunate. Again, there will be sweeping who's to blames and who to fire and who to this, who to that. But just wasn't their year, man. They'll, can make some changes, things of that sort. But I think if the Ravens have even just Lamar Jackson or even just Marlon Humphrey or, even just one of these guys, they're able to do some nice things, win 1 or 2 of these games that they needed in the last month and a half and punch their ticket. But they still ultimately are Jamie Lannister fighting with a hand behind tied behind their back. And here we are, 8-8 football team.
Did Jamie Lannister make the playoffs?
Yeah, Jamie Lannister was a wild card. He was supposed to be a 1 seed. He was a wild card. Goes on the road, puts up a tough game, loses.
I like that. So yeah, so Mark says everything in football is, quote, in vain unless you are one of 32 teams. I think we can take moral victories as fans. Excited to see what healthy Ravens look like next year. I think like there's been a lot of arguments on the Twitter sphere about that, like this idea of moral victories. Like the way I look at it is there are moral victories until there aren't. And that's when your season has its breaking point, and that was today. And then in a couple weeks, when emotions have died down and X, Y, and Z, there are going to be moral victories again. Like there's going to be silver linings and positives to pretty much always take, unless you're like the Jags with Urban Meyer this year. And even that fan base is going to be selling itself on some positivity in a couple weeks' time. So if you're one of those people that wants to kind of lean back on your pride and say, I'm not taking any moral victories, like that's fine. I get it. Like this was a tough loss. I'm pretty pissed off too. And that's the end of it. But I don't know. There are going to be moral victories to take away from this season. Ultimately, I think they, to a lot of what you said really well there, they showed so much fight in the face of so much bullshit. Like, and like the adversity word got thrown around a ton to the point where it was maybe a little overused and cliche and not totally my cup of tea after a certain point. But as cliche as it is, it was cliche for a reason. And that was because it was every freaking week they're losing key guys, and they were, even along the way, they were losing guys like McPhee and Watkins and McCary to just these little like nagging nicks of injuries that like keep them out. Bradley Bozeman misses today completely unexpectedly. He just gets sick right before kickoff and he can't play center. So they're trotting out Cologne against Aaron Donald. And that proved to be, not really a sound matchup for the Ravens, but what else could they really do? Like they just had nothing else to do. It reminds me a lot of like, I don't know why I remember this and think back on this so much, but you remember when Matt Hasselbeck was playing for the Colts a couple years ago? It's like the end of his career. He's like 40 years old. They got like 1 game left and he's in the locker room and they're in a grind of a season themselves. And reporters are talking to him. And he just says something that really stuck to me. I thought it was kind of funny, but also kind of sad. He was just like, yeah, I have nothing left. Like, I'm just done. Like, I'm going to retire after this. I'm going to play this game, but like, it's too much for me at this point. It became too much for this team at a certain point, and ultimately the boat sank. You can only plug so many holes in your boat before that thing submerges underwater. And it doesn't matter how many sea shanties you sing and how many good vibes you bring around, you're not going to be able to keep a sucker like this afloat. And basically, what it comes down to is what we always talk about with process base thinking. Did you build your boat correctly, or did it just come? did a natural disaster, an act of God, strike it down? Was it something in the middle? I think it would be something closer to the natural disaster destroying this boat, analogy. Some people might see it differently, but it just feels like a complete spate of weirdness and bad luck. And they had plenty of good luck to start the season too. We don't have to be cavalier about that, but ultimately just a weird season that weirdly a feeling of relief is kind of washing over me, because it just feels like an animal that has been fighting for its life but was really in pain is being put down.
To me, it feels like you're playing a game of Warzone or a video game, and you kind of don't have a good loadout. You don't have a lot of ammo. You don't have a lot of armor, and you're just hanging in there, hiding, getting a kill here and there, playing this super tactical game. Your blood pressure starts rising. Your pupils are dilating. You've got the bated breath, and then eventually you die. You get sniped, and you're like, okay, whew. And then it just kind of is like the punctured lung gets, the air injected to it, gets stabbed and able to kind of breathe again.
Shout out to Tyrod.
Shout out to Tyrod. But yeah, it just kind of, there's just so many moments in this game against the Rams that were just such, I'm going to keep using the word microcosms of this season. There's the Rams touchdown drive at the end where Jimmy Smith, who, I don't want to speak ill of him or anything, but it just looked like he was not very involved early on in the game. He's kind of standing alone on an island, not really communicating much, just standing over on the right side for the most part and, hanging out. And then he comes flying. Sony Michel kind of just, I don't know what the hell that was. Why didn't try to stiff arm him or something, but comes and makes a great play, makes a tackle, sweeps him up. Okay, well, that was third down. Guess what? Now there's fourth down. And Odell Beckham Jr. goes and sits down on the sticks, and Tavon Young is just kind of like, oh my, it's freaking Tavon Young coming back from years of injury against Odell Beckham, and there's just a brief pause there. I kind of watched it happen live where it's like, all right, Odell's sitting down, Stafford's stepping up and looking at him, and Tavon just doesn't close on him, and probably didn't want a penalty or whatever, but just kind of let him sit there at the sticks and didn't disrupt him. It's like, of course the Rams are going to score a touchdown after that. They just couldn't get off the fucking field and end it. And then again, the other microcosm of it is that you are now, after some weird events, I really need to go back through, and I was kind of like in this weird state of mind throughout the game, but I need to go back through and kind of think through the timeouts and the situations and some in-game coaching decisions a little bit, but you burn a couple timeouts. All of a sudden, you've got one timeout, 57 seconds. Your offensive line is bookended by Patrick McCary and Alejandro Villanueva, and your fucking backup quarterback who keeps missing practice as after your starting quarterback kept missing practice for being sick and getting COVID and not getting COVID, but being sick. Then your backup quarterback then gets COVID and is sick and missing practice. So you've got this group with the season on the line against what, three all pros on the Rams defense. And, guys like Leonard Floyd and Darius Williams and shit. And, you've got this ragtag bunch that is trying their best to go beat the Rams in no huddle. And it's like, you don't want to sit back there and let them, tee off, because if you're probably going to have to run at least, maybe a little bit of a chip from the running back, but, either Aaron Donald or Von Miller is going to get a one-on-one, because you need to be punching the ball down the field and getting quick receiving options. And then, of course, Von Miller finally just comes, gets a sack. Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews have to come running 35 yards back because they're trying to push the ball downfield because they had to and can't do it, can't get it done. And it's just like this group of this little band of brothers of Baltimore going against the Monstars of all these super talented, disciplined, awesome players. And then you see Sean McVay come sprinting on the field and he's all fired up. And it's like, Jesus Christ, how much fight do the Ravens have? How do they keep being in these situations? How do they keep playing against Aaron Rodgers and Sean McVay's Rams with Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp and Aaron Donald and Von Miller and, playing against the Browns who are looking to get a win and all these things over and over and over. And it's like such a testament to, I think, their preparation during the week and their ability to find, matchups that work and coverages that work and pressure schemes that are going to work a little bit and some different looks. They frustrated the Rams. They almost blanked them throughout the first half, pretty much probably save for that interception that turns into a touchdown. play an awesome half of football all the way down until the 28.5-minute mark out of 30. And then it just was so much overload of these moments over and over and over again throughout this season. And today was no different. You mentioned how they kind of were on the other edge of that, but at the same time, they weren't as worn down. They weren't as beat up. And then that's what I was kind of saying early in the year. It's nice when you're 6-2 or 5-2 or whatever you are, and you've done it despite some injuries. But guess what? They're going to keep coming, and they're going to keep coming, and they're going to keep coming, and guys are going to keep getting more beat up and more beat up. So you go from being limited to being hobbled, and it's just it really has felt like the beginning of the season in August was so long ago, but it went by so quick all at the same time. So many emotions, many things to take away, but I do believe the Ravens are in a good place. I think they have a nice constitution. I think there is much to take away from the fact that they were able to play within their means. They played to 100% of their potential almost so often in losses. And it just looks good on the type of guys that they're able to bring in, that in the UDFA or the vets that kind of get passed on at this point. I mean, Devontae Freeman's reeling off fucking 32-yard runs in a key moment of this game with like a 2-point lead, is kind of flipping the field with a run. Like who had that on their bingo card? So I think it's a testament to their process overall and what they do during the week and the preparation that they do and the systems that they have in place and the leadership from the owner and everything from the top down. But there's also kind of nothing to celebrate. So it's really, truly is bittersweet. They didn't accomplish anything other than some nice moments. I kind of feel some relief, I think, now of not having to talk much about Tyler Huntley in the same vein as Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I think that's we can end that for everyone who's going on and on about that kind of thing and still trying to make it a story. Like we can end that after today. And I like Tyler a lot, and he has put forth an incredibly admirable effort, and he has earned himself a long-term career as a backup and maybe a starter at some point in the NFL. But we should probably just stop with that after today.
Yeah, he hasn't won a whole lot, and Lamar Jackson has won a lot of games and done so kind of in the face of what's happened. And I think that it's kind of, Lamar is a bone bruise, and that situation, you see him limping around. The fact that he was able to get on the field is encouraging, I think, for his relative health. But to be able to kind of have this little remiss at the end where he was carrying the team early on, and then it feels like, some pressure got to him, and the weaknesses and vulnerabilities of his line and of his game and all of those things kind of just, he succumbed to them at one point, and some weaknesses that the offense had in itself, and Greg Roman had, and the offensive line had, and everybody had, and receivers doing certain things. So it just kind of is nice, and I think they can go back and lick their wounds on that side of the ball. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty still with Ronnie Stanley until we see him on the field and looking good, feeling good, playing good, talking good, and things of that nature. Obviously, we're going to be up through the offseason and draft season. And I mean, there is one scenario where probably isn't going to happen, but the Ravens can make the playoffs. But it just kind of feels like at this point, you had a quarterback that was carrying so much weight at a young age still, couple years experience, and now it got him knocked out a little bit. Eventually he got put down, and he's gonna have to get back up and go make this offense go on a more sustainable, consistent level. And they've got the pieces in place at the skill positions. They just extended McCary for quite some time, who probably played a nice game again today, despite having a hand injury he's worked through, which doesn't help when his margin for error is a little bit smaller than some other guys. Due to just kind of natural God-given gifts, and it's going to be a fluid situation.
Did you see? I'm sorry to cut you off. Did you see that Von Miller quote about him?
He's gone up against him twice and has done a really nice job. I didn't see the quote, but
he says Von Miller. This is from Mink on Twitter. Von Miller on his game-sealing sack. Yes, McCary, the right tackle. He's one of the best right tackles in the league, and I played him earlier in the season in Denver, and I feel like he got my number. I was telling the guys all week that I've got a bone to pick. So it's a sign of respect, big time.
Yeah, and it took until, like the 2-minute drill at the end of the game. Actually, no, he got one earlier, but I think that one was a little bit more so because of pressure and Huntley rolling left. I don't know, but yeah. So McCary, a good player, and I think he's a guy who epitomizes what this season has been about in ways for those that have been able to stick around. You feel for guys like Calais Campbell or Justin Houston who have played really valiantly and came to Baltimore to try to win something and kind of end up in this weird dystopian freaking team and whatever this season was. But I mean, shit happens. It happened to the 49ers last year. Like I said, it's kind of happened to the Titans to a degree this year. But overall, they're going to be hungry. They have a lot of young players that are experienced now that they probably want to rely on a little bit. We're going to say goodbye to Jimmy Smith as a Raven, a lifelong Raven who goes out in these in this last game. I guess he'll play one more, but in this kind of last truly meaningful game towards making the postseason, and makes a big play down in the red zone and things of that nature. So it's going to be some turnover and some changes, and who knows? It's unlikely. I feel like that both coordinators stick around for a fourth year together. I think that would be pretty rare. It's kind of cool that that's happened, and I know that everybody hates the coordinators. It's the cool, trendy thing to do is talk shit about the coordinator for whatever reason, but it's rare that that's happened, and I think they've built some identities there. And I saw Cole Jackson on Twitter saying, "What is the identity of this team?" It's like they're aggressive. They have Lamar Jackson. They run the ball. They like to marry the run and the pass, and they fucking play special teams. They hit you. They give you a million different looks on offense and defense, and throw everything in the kitchen sink at you. And they win a lot of football games.
I think the identity this year, and I get what he's saying with like the fact that they just feel a little faceless right now, but I think that's a function of just not having their main talent on the field. I think the identity this year is they're just going to fight their ass off no matter who's out there, and they're just going to do
like
whatever.
Rocky Balboa is their identity.
Yeah, it's the Harbaugh quote. It's not pretty, it's not perfect, but it's us. It's all about what do we got to do to win, and fuck style points, and fuck what you think. And like the other side of that, like I wrote, is like the inverse is there are no moral victories, or style points and moral victories are kind of like inverse cousins of one another. But like ultimately, like yeah, this is the identity to me. It was more cemented than anything this year that they're going to go out there and absolutely play their ass off for Harbaugh, and they did that with a comically decimated roster this year. So the identity question to me is, I think they're going to be just fine in that respect moving forward. Just got to get your talent back.
Certainly. And kind of, I don't know. It's just like if you're watching Red Zone, it can kind of convolute what you think is going on in these games because it's like showing you the highs of the games. And when you really sit down and watch some other teams, there still is, I would say, this element of like I don't know, just watching random games, Seahawks, Bears, or whatever was going on today. It's like the game flows so much smoothly when the Ravens aren't involved. It kind of has these natural football plays that occur. This is very big brain, but then you see like the Packers play the Ravens, who are a very good team and probably going to be the 1 seed. And it's like they are in a fucking dogfight with the Ravens when the Ravens don't have anyone. It's their backup quarterback. And the Rams, again, like it's basically like every team that plays the Ravens, it's like they're playing a divisional game. And again, I just feel like they prepare really well throughout the week.
Well, I think
didn't have the dogs. They didn't have Marcus Peters or Humphrey or these guys that can suffocate your pass game at the end of a game. And they let up a ton of big plays this year. They let up a lot of long touchdowns. They kind of cut back on those aside from the Bengals game. And, it's like every game's a divisional game when you're playing the Ravens, no matter what team you are.
I think I was thinking about this recently, and like kind of to your point there, I just think they played a lot of really good and like at their absolute worst, like solid teams. They played, okay, so let's look at their schedule. Vegas, they have a winning record right now. They lost to them.
Vegas also, that was when they still had Waller and Ruggs.
Yep, and it was week 1,
in
so
their new stadium.
Yep, exactly. So Vegas, L. Kansas City win. Detroit, well, they have 3 wins, 4 wins right now, but they're playing hard for Campbell. Denver, they're just below 500. Indy, they're a winning team. Chargers, winning team. Cincinnati, winning team. Minnesota, right around 500. Miami, 500. Chicago, 6 wins. Cleveland, right around 500. Pittsburgh, 500. Cleveland, 500. Green Bay, winning. Cincinnati, winning. Rams, winning. They got Pittsburgh again this week. That's a hard-ass schedule.
It was. It made them the definition of the most cliche phrase, battle tested. So they had to go through it over and over and over again, and it was tough. And then you go look at a team like the Titans, who's kind of a similar team to the Ravens in some ways. And I feel like in terms of being able to prepare really well and play some really strong games, and they're in the same division with the Texans and the Jaguars, and kind of this okay Colts team, and they're just in a tough division, had a tough schedule. They have to play the Rams as their NFC edition game. The only kind of real flopper they had was the Lions, and I'm pretty sure the Lions have like a winning record against the spread. They've played a lot of teams really tough and could definitely have a couple more wins.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, and you don't even really think about that when you're in the grind of the season and when you're losing all these players, but that should almost be highlighted more when you think about all that they've lost talent wise and just kind of all that they've had to face COVID wise and all this just crazy shit. The fact that they've been able to stay in these games and they have a chance to walk out of this season with a winning record. That's, it's pretty impressive to me. So again, there's no moral victories right now. I get that, but I think if they walk out of the season at 9-8, a couple weeks from now, we'll say, you know what, after all that had happened to them with the schedule they face, that's pretty freaking solid.
Yeah, and I mean they have the same, they're in the same kind of boat as the Chargers, who are like one of the like darlings of the NFL, and they beat the shit out of the Chargers at home, and just had some weird things going. And that Dolphins game is just so funny because the Dolphins defense went on such a nice long run. They didn't play a ton of good teams, but just that game being 4 days after they had to play the overtime game against the Vikings, and it's like this Dolphins team that is summoning all of their spirit to go get a win and get something started and make a push, and all of these different things. And the fact it I don't know, just so much irony. This NFL season has been so strange and winding, and COVID lingering, and guys going in and out, and they're changing the rules, and it's an extra game this year, and all these strange factors. And it's like they played the Bengals last week with a chance to take the lead in the division. They have to trot Josh Johnson out, but it's like, oh, okay, the Bengals last week are going into that game, and what happened in that game? It's like, oh, they're a Super Bowl dark horse and all these things, and they were just right in the same level of success of what the Bengals had done in terms of the wins, in terms of the losses. So it just really has been a peculiar season. It's one that there's 2015 and there's 2014 and those years, and I think it has its own flavor this season, but it's something that I definitely will remember as just a really unique year in the NFL overall, a unique year in terms of our society, our world, and everything. And then the kind of the Ravens having this tough, confused go, I think really epitomized kind of the time that we all had in 2021 and, throughout the pandemic and things of that nature. And, just everybody trying to keep putting their heads down and fight through all these changes and different new, weird, good, bad things that have gone on. So it's really been exhausting. It's been tiring. It's been fun. There's been great moments. That Chiefs game feels like so long ago, but that was so sick when they beat the Chiefs.
That was the most fun I've ever had in that stadium, and I've been in there for some big ass games.
It was a lively one, and that's something I will say. Sadly, today, I think the Rams coming to town. It's right after New Year's, and there was a lot of empty seats today. A lot more than I think I've seen this season at all. I will say there of any game I can really remember, I think that might have been the fewest opposing fans I've ever seen. There was a lot of like St. Louis Rams jerseys.
I think COVID is probably playing a big role in a lot of this right now.
Somewhat for sure, but it was just it was weird energy in the stadium today. Weird kind of it's the end of the game. Not everybody was really standing up. I think like the team is exhausted. The fans are exhausted. I think time off for this team is going to be a good thing to kind of go back and lick their wounds and take a breath, and some younger players get an off season, and guys like Rashad Bateman and things of that nature. There's going to be a lot of questions, a lot of moving parts, but I mean, it's just been a long one that feels like it went quickly. But when you think back to that Las Vegas game and that Chiefs game and those games, it feels like forever ago. So a weird season, a fun season, a tough season. But hey, man, one of the things I love about John Harbaugh as a whole is that the Ravens have they'll play a meaningful game in week 18. In the last, I guess since 2015, I think they've played one meaningless game.
Yeah.
So they're in it at the end every year, and it's exciting as a whole. They haven't won a Super Bowl. They have only won one playoff game, but as a fan, you can look around to, the Beltway down south to what's going on in Washington and some other teams around the league, and you want more success, and you might feel shorthanded or shortchanged by a team that you have very high expectations for. Years like this year, years like last year. Last year they had to fight through some things, but it's giving you meaningful football games at every which turn. And now we kind of have like a little bit of a breath of relief, and hopefully we are able to go watch the Ravens kick the fucking Cowboy and flip this Western on its head and send Ben Roethlisberger packing, which is a nice little treat to hopefully see on a tough season.
You talk about the things that I wanted for them to make the playoffs. Well, I showed up every fucking week, and I poured my heart and soul into that for them. And you know what? It didn't happen, and I'm sorry. You guys owe this to me. You owe to send this fucking fugazi cowboy running off into the hills with his fucking tail tucked between his legs and his 6-shooter out of bullets. And I'm just done with it. We need to get rid of this guy once and for all. I don't want to hear about all these emotional little pieces and say what you will about him as a person. That person who tweeted that, who I will not mention, which is fucking awful. We're done with this Ben Roethlisberger experience, and I'm pretty happy about it. And I would be a lot happier with a real big win over him next Sunday. But yeah, to your point, I'm so glad this season is over. Honestly, like, this has been a tough year for me in some respects, for a couple different reasons that I won't get into. But it's been a stressful couple months in particular, and I don't think football and all the freaking primetime games that they played in this year, and all of those games being as insane as they were, it is taxing on a man's body, especially when he has to podcast through it. So, not calling myself a hero, but
maybe a martyr.
Listen, maybe a sheriff. Maybe I'm the John Wayne of this podcasting sphere, but I am exceptionally glad that it's pretty much over, and hopefully we get a relatively stress-free game next week. I'm sure it's not going to happen. I'm sure somehow all the playoff scenarios are going to be alive 2 minutes into their final fucking drive, and it's going to be Tyler Huntley with 80 yards to go for a touchdown to get them into the playoffs. Somehow that's going to happen, and they're going to come up short. But as of right now, sitting here, I feel fairly stress-free. I feel some clarity for the first time in a long time.
I'm glad for you. Honestly, in the grand scheme of things, let's say the Ravens won this game today and were able to make the stop or score at the end or whatever it was, go into the playoffs, maybe win one game, have to like go play the Bengals again or something weird and have a shit show go on, and then everyone gets more upset. But regardless, the most memorable part of this season, aside from the injuries, will be them playing the Pittsburgh Steelers in John Wayne Roethlisberger's last game of potentially his career against, John Harbaugh and the staff and the crew, Wink, and some of Calais Campbell, some of these players. That is going to be the memory of this season, I think. So the irony of it, if let's say the Steelers were to lose tomorrow, and these teams kind of play like a pretty meaningless game in terms of playoff implications, I think would be kind of comically, like cosmically awesome to have that be, kind of just like Ben trying to win his last game in Baltimore with no other implications. That probably won't be the case, but I just think that's awesome. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see him come to town and everything that transpires. It's very fitting that is the cherry at the end. That's kind of the pod at the end of the fucked up rainbow, is to have it be Ben Roethlisberger's final game potentially of his
And
career.
it'll be his final game, I think, because unlike these other selfish superstars like Johnny Unitas and Joe Montana and Tom Brady that went to go play for other franchises, Ben is just too loyal to do that. So he's going to retire forever a Pittsburgh Steeler. And all these other teams that are going to want to come and vie for his services, you're not going to be allowed to do that because he is leaving the Steelers. And then 5 years later, he's entering the Hall of Fame as one of the greatest quarterbacks / Cowboys of all time. So God bless him.
Old Kevin Costner coming down the trail. So that's going to be an exciting one. The Steelers got the best of the Ravens in a dramatic thriller bullshit fingertip fucking dumb stupid whatever happening at the end of that game where there's just so many instances of being in this gray cloud of the scale tipping or not tipping. I mean, they didn't beat the Chiefs. Odafe forced a fumble that was like across Clyde Edwards-Helaire's body. Like, had no business forcing that fumble. Clyde Edwards-Helaire did nothing. OA was
You talk about
blindly swinging at the ball and hit it versus Odell Beckham punching Chuck Clark in the
butthole. And he recovered it. You talk about, it's funny, you talk about Huntley, like talking about the officials today. He's like, yeah, we actually got the playoff in time. They jumped the gun a little bit. Well, you look at that week 3 game at Detroit. There was maybe a little bit of luck that went into that game-winning kick being a 66-yarder to begin with. So it's
sports in general, these professional sports that have so much fucking error involved and inconsistency in what is a delay of game, what is a pass interference, what is a travel, what is this, what is that, like across sports, what is a strike zones, all of this shit is just unbelievable that it is still happening and will happen forever.
That's what makes it great, honestly. Like people that talk about like the automated strike zones and like the robot umps, like I need Cowboys. Talk about Cowboys. I need Cowboy Joe West out there wearing his black wristband and protesting against umpire abuse. And I need these characters like Jeff Triplett and Jerome Boger out there, and who's the guy in the NBA that like kind of really inserted himself into the proceedings at one time. It's the fucking best. I love the human element of sports.
It's something. It certainly is something. So that whole happenstance that happened, and just living in a big gray cloud of what the fuck. That is the Baltimore Ravens season this year. But I mean, Tony Jefferson in the year 2022, making plays, flexing, running down the field, making big tackles, looking like, like we wanted him to look when he was kind of maybe a little bit too much pressure on him a couple years ago or whatever it was when he wasn't able to get things done the way. But now he just comes off of this injury. He's getting passed around like a fucking, black and mild at a goddamn frat party and between teams bouncing around on practice squads and rehabbing, and then just comes in and is just repetitively making plays and flexing in the year 2022. And at the end of the Ravens season in a must-win game in week 17, Tony Jefferson coming back and making plays. Like, I don't know. I feel like I have been living inside of some sort of alternate reality that I need to escape. This is the Matrix. I am Trinity. Neo, please come save me.
30 years old next season. He's coming back.
Probably. He's the new fucking Anthony Levine or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what people were saying on Twitter. I put the take out there and everyone responded with that, and that was a great comparison. Bring him back. He's looked great the last couple of weeks. He looks, to your point about him looking good, he looks better in his uniform now than he did in the past. I don't know if he's bigger or what, but he's looking.
It's a new number, right?
Yeah, he's 31 compared
what was his old number? 20.
Yeah, because he wanted
that his old number. Yeah, 23 was his old number.
Yeah, he wanted the Jordan.
He looks like I feel like it's secretly is Landon Collins and no one knows or something.
Well, he looks, the 31 is a better strong safety number, I think. Kind of gives me Bernard Pollard vibes before he became
He's not even really. He's playing like a weird little like rover position, like
a creeper.
He's doing some weird little position where he's in the slot and in the box and just like flexing really hard, moving laterally, and then like running downhill and flexing after the play and getting sacks and stuff.
I mean, that 2-point conversion play was one of the better defensive plays all season from any player.
I've always loved Tony Jefferson as a person, as a player. I think he got a bad beat in Baltimore. He was basically just like, they're like, all right, Tony, go cover all these really good tight ends that we have in the AFC right now. and he would get dunked on a bit, and everyone would be like, "Oh, he fucking sucks." But he would make some cool plays. He has an incredible personality, so very happy for him to play well, come back from that injury, and get to play a little more football because feels like he's not done with the not done yet. He's not done yet. So love that for Tony. Love that about him. I was a big fan of the signing. That was before I started Baltimore Beatdown, and that was like my big take of that offseason was like that guy Tony Jefferson that they played against that gets all these tackle for losses. He has like a 39 passer rating allowed when covering tight ends for the Cardinals or whatever. Like I was like, they need that guy. That guy is a Raven, perfect Raven. Had that sick play where he secretly scored a touchdown against the Steelers that one time, but they didn't count it because stupid rules. But I count that as a touchdown. So love to see it for Tony. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm twisted up. I'm not talking about the draft yet. People already asked me draft questions. I'm not talking about it yet. The season's not over, and they still could make the playoffs. So draft season has not started yet. Draft season starts when the fat lady Roethlisberger hollers from her fucking larynx and lets the townsmen know that the villain is dead. So I'm not ready for that yet. So we're going to refrain from that, but we will get into it. I'm excited for that part of the year as well, regardless of however things do shake out. It feels like we kind of know how they're going to shake out, but we're avoiding that. But we had a nice time doing the purple prospect portfolio, which we may rename and reshape a little bit, but we're probably going to do something to that collection again. Jake, you and I put a lot. That was a very time-consuming and thorough project that we did.
What I liked about that was nice because like we would record one night a week during those days. So you would come over here, we would record our news pod, and then we would record that after and release it later in the week. So I think we're gonna have to do something like that again. And like I said,
you had the glorious Forgotten Dynasty, which came out, which was awesome. So we had a great offseason last offseason. We're looking forward to reshaping some things and trying to have some more fun content like that. That's usually when we can get some pretty obscure guests as well in the off season when everyone's a little less busy. And so that's a fun part about it too. So we are excited for that.
Season is fun as a fan. The off season is way more fun as a content guy. Cause like you're not so beholden to the weekly schedule, preview, review. You can kind of like do your own thing a little bit. So I enjoy it's not even a challenge. It's just like more fun to kind of do your own thing a little bit and kind of
this like you said, this season for us personally was with all those primetime games. There was that stretch there where it was really, really, really tough. But we love it. We love you guys. Thank you to everyone who has hung in there. The season is not over. The real season. There's a 1 week season next week against old John Wayne Roethlisberger. So we're pumped for that one. We'll be getting into that one.
Coming to town, everyone.
What is it?
Old Fig Jam is coming to town.
Yep. He's got his 6-shooter. He's got his Spurs on. He's got Old Faithful, his old dusty saddle, wiping it down, throwing it back on. Old blue jeans, his horse there, and riding through the mountains, ready to go.
Got some sort of companion next to him who may be of the south of the border variety, wearing a little poncho, maybe his guide, perhaps. Navigating him through the
unfamiliar territory.
Yeah, through the harsh terrain, the harsh country. And he's just a lone ranger out there. And he's, a mysterious man. He is a man of few words. Some call him Blondie. He smokes a stub of a cigar.
A stub of a cigarette that he rolls himself.
Yeah, a little cigarillo. And he's out there on the plains, just, living the life of a rugged frontiersman.
Bearded up, lubed up, ready for action. Ready to show these youngsters the old man still got it one last time.
Yeah, and it can't come soon enough because it seems like there is a new sheriff on the block over in Cincinnati who made me eat my words a little bit, thinking that Kansas City was going to go in there and shut them up. So that didn't happen. Bengals win the AFC North. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, absolute dynamo of a quarterback wide receiver duo. I still think they're going to get silenced at some point in the playoffs. I mean, it's a pretty easy thing to say, but I truly do believe that they are going to bungle at some point, but we shall see. Great job by them this season.
I don't know about that one. They have the weapons. I guess someone can put them in some sort of headlock, but Their weapons are ridiculous. Burrow's footwork is insane. We'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But I lost my train of thought. Oh, Mark Dent here. Hope we get to see Ray at the game next week. You know what I'd really like to see at the game next week? Terrell Suggs. I'd really like to see Terrell Suggs at the game next week. Can we start tweeting at him, listeners? Come to the game. Come to the game. Come to Ben's last game in Baltimore. Talk a little shit.
He's still in the free agent market, so he's probably trying to stay. What they should do is sign him and just have him.
They should sign him. That would be all right. Let's start tweeting at Lacey, I guess.
Yeah, if
there's one thing to ever bother her about, it's hey, can Eric sign T Sizzle one time?
She
please?
Probably has a T Sizzle jersey ready to go.
No, she's active players only. She's that type of gal, but that would be sick. Hopefully, T Sizzle. We're gonna have to get after him. You're the verified one, so we're gonna have to get after him. See if we can get old Suggsy to Baltimore for next week. No one has sacked Ben Roethlisberger more in his career, and his soul may belong to God, but his ass belongs to Sizz. So that's
what a quote on a lot of different levels. A wild thing to say.
But it was at the time as well. It was fantastic. That is like my soul is Terrell Suggs. Like shit talking Terrell Suggs is like what I am at my core.
Don't get me wrong. I love these young guys. A lot of these young guys that we have, like Marlon going nuts on Twitter about NFTs and shit, and like Deshaun.
I'm done with that. I'm done with that.
Deshaun Elliott like talking his shit. We got some funny young characters.
Sean Elliott has some OG in him. He's got none of them that old.
I mean, Marcus obviously too, but none of them really compared to T Sizzle. I don't think he was the right combination of sugar and spice. What a character.
Maybe we need discourse on Terrell Suggs more often. Someone who we don't bring up enough.
Well, he's got to retire. He's not retired yet.
Exactly. That's why he needs to sign for next week.
Yeah. Listen, I'm the one who came up with the idea.
Mark here in the comments, we need to make a GoFundMe for Sizz to incur fines in that game. Yes.
Listen, I think he's doing well enough that he can handle a fine or two. He's got a movie studio. He's got a movie production studio that he runs. He's doing just fine in life right now.
He certainly is. Deuce 1042 Jamar is legit not coverable one-on-one. There's nothing the KC corners should do. Yeah, apparently he's like fucking Jerry Rice. I don't know what's going on.
He's like I don't know.
He is the strongest pound for pound maybe person on earth. Like
I want to say I was a little higher on you than him ahead of the draft, and I was like, dude, I don't know what I'm missing with this guy, and maybe that's just like a novice beginner's luck thing where it's just like you just look at him and it's just like this dude is not going to be able to be stopped. Like he's a fucking tank, and he's so fast, and his arms are long as shit. What do you do?
He's so strong. He's so strong. Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of like those players at the top of the draft. I kind of just glaze over because I'm like, okay,
that makes sense.
Not really up in there. I did have DeVonta Smith number 1 as my number 1 receiver.
Yeah, I was a Jamar guy through and through. But I did think it was stupid for the Bengals not to take Sewell. So I will eat that.
There we go. But ultimately, we have 1 to go. I hope that many of the listeners can kind of feel some release and, whatever. Everybody wants the coordinators tarred and feathered and freaking thrown in the harbor or whatever, but maybe just take a breather, drink some water, get a good night's rest. And we'll start peeling back the layers here over time and get into it. I still haven't heard any sort of interviews for Wink or anything of the sort. I thought his defense, continued. Basically, the only real fucking shit show game he had was the Bengals, and I think there was some context there as well. So, yeah, a lot coming down the pipeline. But first and foremost, one final ride, one final game, hopefully, would be the perfect cherry on top of a fucked up Sunday for the Ravens to kind of embarrass the Steelers a little bit, but. I just feel that no matter what, it won't go that way. It will come down to some sort of situation, some sort of crux in time, a wrinkle in time. And we'll be there. We'll be talking with you. We'll be coming back Thursday, talk about that one. I'm sure there'll be tons of good media clips and sound bites this week and memories stirred up and things of that nature. So, without further ado, I think that does it for us.
Yeah, I think it does too. Get out to that game if you can. It's going to be a fun one. We'll have plenty more to talk about with that in the preview on Thursday, like you mentioned. Apologies for no preview this week. I think we both just kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit. We were both on vacation. You were down in OC, just dancing your way around Fagers and having a grand old time. So
True.
that was nice. I had a nice week off of work. So again, apologies for no preview, but we'll be back on the horse this week. So thank you guys for listening. As always, it has been a grind of a season. To your point, it's not totally over yet, but I don't think we're going to be dealing with quite the same intensity as we've been dealing with in other weeks. So, it's unfortunate, but it's also kind of a nice feeling from our point of view. And hopefully you guys too. Hopefully, the stress levels can kind of go down a little bit. We can understand the context that this is a little bit of a lost season with your quarterback missing for the final quarter of it. And ultimately we'll see what happens in the coming weeks. We don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be fun to watch, as I always say. So stay tuned into the pod over the next coming weeks. We'll have to see what we do. This will be the first time doing the podcast that they probably are going to miss the playoffs. So we're probably going to have to put some content planning together for the month of January, but I'm sure we'll be doing plenty of fun stuff. We'll still be covering the games and everything too. And just kind of taking it light and easy and hopefully having a fun January. Because last year's January and February, that was true sad boy season. The weather was shitty. I was inside pretty much 2 straight months. But the weather's been a little more manageable. So maybe I'm going to be able to be outside for this January. We'll see what happens. But that's my own problem to deal with as I continue to land the plane here. Thanks again one last time for listening to the show, guys. Follow us on social media. You can follow the show on Twitter at Podcast Beatdown. I am at Jake Luke. That is LOUQUE. Spencer is at Ravens 4 Dummies. That's the number 4 in the middle. Check out BaltimoreBeatdown.com for all of our written content, as well as all the other great written content that we offer. And get at us on Instagram too, where we're doing plenty of great content, memes, and all that good stuff at Baltimore_Beatdown. Thanks again, guys. Tough one today, but we're moving past it, onward and upward, and let's go put this old 6-shooting, rootin' tootin' cowboy officially to rest this coming weekend.
See ya.
Arrivederci.